Okay, let's go ahead and start the meeting follow-up. Parker, do you have anything?
Your Honor, I do not.
Actually, does council have anything they want to follow up on from last meeting? Okay. Nope. All right. Moving on to our municipal court judges update. Come on up.
I want to apologize to council for my attire. I got busy doing some stuff with my dad, and it was either be late here and go home and change, or be here and come as I was. So I apologize.
You are just fine.
I apologize.
Well, thank you. So again, I'm just going to start with my standard disclaimer. Of course, when you get lawyers or judges in the house, there's always going to be a disclaimer. So under Wyoming rule of judicial conduct, we're restricted in what we can and can't do when we appear before a legislative body. And so I just want to make it clear that we are here pursuant to canon or rule 3.2, and we're here to discuss matters concerning the law, the legal system, or the administration of justice. So with that, we've prepared a little PowerPoint presentation here. John Masterson, when he did our evaluations, he recommended that we put something together just to kind of give you an overview of how cases go through the court system here. So we have this for you today. Before I start, I'll just mention that, of course, the only cases that we have in the municipal court are violations of the city ordinances and state statutes that have been adopted by the city code. So we don't see many of the more serious offenses, thank God, including domestic violence and things of that nature. So we're limited to the ordinance of the city of Casper. And there are various ways that cases arise. The first and probably the most common way are tickets are issued by the police department, or sometimes they'll be issued by other departments. Community service, community service officers sometimes will issue like nuisance tickets, people that aren't mowing or have junk in their yards. But the tickets are issued by the law enforcement, including parking violations. And on the citation, it will give them a court date to appear. And they need to show up at 9:30 in the morning on their court date for their arraignment. And that's essentially their opportunity to enter a plea on the charge. They can close the pay, or they can pay the ticket without appearing if it is not a must appear citation. So on the citation itself, it's got a box that will say must appear or may forfeit bond in lieu of appearance. And as long as it allows them to forfeit bond in lieu of appearance, they can go in to the court window and pay. They can pay online. They can pay by telephone. So they have various options short of appearing in court.
And we did just revamp the must appears not very long ago. We just went through those and we had that 12-hour hold thing that started. So we did just revamp some of our must appears. So it's a little bit different, but not a lot than it was.
All right, and then the other way that a case can start is by an arrest. And so arrest would include someone that gets arrested on a warrant, either for not showing up in court before, or sometimes the police will fill out an affidavit, the city attorney will sign off on it, and then a new charge can be brought in by an affidavit or an arrest. And if that occurs, then the rules in Wyoming require that there's a probable cause determination within 72 hours of their arrest. Now, if they're arrested on a warrant, probable cause has already been determined. So the probable cause determination would only apply if it was a new charge that someone was arrested on. And if they're being held in custody, they have a right to have the court verify that probable cause has been established to hold them, to arrest them and hold them. The defendants can post the bond if there is a bond on the warrant, and all the failed to appear warrants and failed to comply warrants, they're all going to have a bond amount on them. If it is a arrest for a new charge, it may or may not have a bond. But if there is no bond that is established, then we will see them in custody hearings, which are typically held Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. Thursday mornings occasionally, depending on the caseload. Sometimes we add another day. But typically we have the in-custody arraignments on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday starting at 8:15 in the morning. If they're released on a bond, the jail will give them a new court date to show up, because at that point they haven't appeared before the court, so they need to come in and enter their plea. So the jail will give them a court date for them to appear. And then, as Lisa mentioned, we now have, or we've kind of reinstated the 12-hour hold and release rule that allows most people that are arrested to be released essentially on their own recognizance without posting a bond after they've served 12 hours, or until they have sobered up to the point where they can be safely released. If they're released on a 12-hour hold, then the jail will give them the court date to appear. Okay, then the next step would be the arraignment, and the arraignment is essentially the opportunity for them to enter their plea. Now, the most common pleas are guilty, no contest, or not guilty. Occasionally, we'll have a plea of not guilty by reason of mental illness, or deficiency, but we don't see those very often. They do come up from time to time. We had a conference last week with the municipal judges around the state, and they had a good presentation on dealing with those. And in those cases, we have to get the state hospital involved and do an evaluation and determine their fitness. But typically, they're guilty or no contest. Guilty and no contest is basically the same. They're treated the same. They both would result in a conviction on the record for the charge. The difference legally is that with a guilty plea, the folks also give up their right to remain silent. So in those cases, you have to take the oath and essentially admit the elements of the offense under oath subject to penalty of perjury. With a no contest plea, you don't have to make any statement about it if you don't want to. But we typically do give them a right or opportunity to make a statement. So if they plead guilty or no contest, typically they're sentenced right then and there. Sentence can be either fine or probation and or jail. And so there are occasions when we do reset the sentencing for later date. For example, if there's restitution involved and we need to know how much the property damage was involved, for example, something like that. When they're sentenced, then they typically set up a payment plan, and the sentence, then if they're sentenced on probation, it would include the terms of the probation as well. We do have the ability, thanks to the support of the council, to have supervised probation through our court, which we haven't always had. And it's another tool in the toolbox. It helps keep people, accountable. They have somebody that they need to report to and so forth. And the probation officer, we call her case coordinator, she typically monitors, make sure everything's getting done. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's interesting just that with our probationary terms, I think our probation is pretty good. Some of the things that we don't allow are things like being in a gambling establishment, because typically if you're in a gambling establishment, there's drinking a lot of times. And so since we see so many alcohol related offenses, that's something that we see. But it really has been nice to have that. I've never not had it because I'm pretty new, but it really has been nice. And I've been a little bit surprised, I guess, at how many people, once they complete their probationary term, are trying to stay sober, and they will opt to keep their probationary term for a little while longer to come back in to have that accountability. I can think of 2 people right off the top of my head that I feel like it's really helped. So that's all I had to add on that.
So, and then of course the other plea is a not guilty plea. And if they plead not guilty, then we don't do anything other than if we need to talk about conditions of bond, we do that. But otherwise, all we do is just set it for a trial. So not guilty pleas are set for bench trial, typically. Bench trials are scheduled according to the officer's schedule. So that we do that so that we're not bringing them in after working a graveyard shift. And also, I think it helps with the police department so they don't have to pay overtime. So we work really closely with the police department to try to schedule them whenever possible when the officer's working. If the offense is a jailable offense, the defendant is entitled to a jury trial. And if that's the case, what we typically do is schedule it for some kind of a pretrial conference to make sure that they really are going to go forward with a jury trial, because it takes a lot to bring a panel of jury in. We have a jury panel on call all the time. And thankfully, we don't have to bring them in all that often, but they're on call, and if we need to bring them in, we of course have to pay them the standard jury fees and whatnot. If the defendant is charged with a jailable offense, they have a right to apply for a court-appointed attorney as well. So we've got a packet that they've got to fill out, and then we require them to provide supporting documents that verify what their monthly expenses are, so we can see, you know, whether or not they truly are indigent. But if they qualify, then we've got an attorney that is appointed by the court to basically represent those folks. Oops. Okay, so bench trial or jury trial, again, if it's a bench trial, we schedule with the officer's schedule. Basically, the trial is the same if you see trials on TV, and that's the other thing I'll mention is that even though we do just municipal court cases, the same rules of evidence apply to a first-degree murder case as to parking citations. So basically, the same procedures have to apply. The only difference is that with a felony, they get a preliminary hearing. But other than that, basically, it's the exact same procedure. City presents their case first. When they get done questioning their witnesses, the defendants have an opportunity to question the witness. After the city presents all their witnesses, they rest their case. Then the defendant, if he wants or he or she wants to, has a right at that point to present a case or not that they're choosing. And if they call witnesses, including themselves, they're subject to cross-examination by the city prosecutor as well. When the defendant finished with his case, the city has an opportunity to present what's called rebuttal evidence, which would be anything that was new that was brought up by the defense case. The city has an opportunity to rebut that. City always has the right to go first and last because they have the burden. It's just the way criminal law has worked since the founding of our country and in every court. But essentially, after the trial, they're either found guilty or not guilty. If the defendant's found not guilty, that's the end. The case is closed. The bond's released if there was a bond, and they're free to go. If there's a finding of guilty, then typically it's the same process as if they pled guilty at their arraignment. We typically would go forward right then and there with a sentencing hearing and determine the appropriate sentence, or maybe postpone it if there was still some question about it needed to be resolved before sentencing. So that's essentially the trial. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, not really. I mean, I agree with what Judge Hand says. You know, it's the same whether you've got a capital murder case, you've got a parking ticket, and it is, as everybody knows, beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's a pretty high standard burden of proof. It's interesting for me as a pretty new judge is that having to explain to people that are pro se, which most of them are, you know, what's an opening statement? What's a closing argument? Do you want to waive this? You know, you have to ask questions. This is not your part of the testimony. So it's a lot of hand holding and trying to explain things, but most people are very receptive to it and very good about it. They understand that they don't maybe understand all the legal finagling and it works out. It's challenging sometimes. Most of the time it's okay, I think.
Yeah, and that's the other point is, you know, being a municipal court, we really deal with more people probably than any other court system in the, you know, the whole system, because we deal with your traffic offenders, and you know, we've all unfortunately been pulled over on a traffic stop for speeding or whatever, and so we do have a lot of contact with folks, and oftentimes they haven't had any experience with the law at all. So essentially, if they're found guilty, then we are required under the rules to advise them that they do have a right to appeal the finding and the sentence imposed by the court by perfecting their appeal to the district court within 30 days. That 30-day deadline is hard and fast, and if they miss that deadline, they're out of luck. But we have to advise them that if they appeal, essentially the case is out of the court's hands at that point. We facilitate with the district court to make sure that the record is transferred for the appellate judge to review. But other than that, the municipal court is pretty much out of it. Appeals happen, they're pretty rare. I can't remember the last one that we had from Casper. It's been several years to my knowledge. So. But after an appeal, the appellate court would either affirm the decision, or they can reverse it, or they can remand it back to us for further proceedings. So if there was some error, but they don't feel that it was a, you know, highly prejudicial error, they might remand it back and basically order us to retry the case under different circumstances, or you know, whatever the appeal determined. So that's basically the life of a case in our court. If you guys have any questions?
The thing to remember about appeals is that they don't get to present any new evidence. It's all about whether the proper procedure was followed and if there was anything that was reversible that the court did that was improper. They don't get to say, oh, well, you know, we just discovered something else and we want to make a different argument. So that's something to remember.
Any questions for the judges? Yeah, Pat.
Well, maybe more so to Eric, or so direct supervision and oversight, is that to the attorney's office?
Of the judges?
Yeah.
It's us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, Eric works pretty closely with them.
Well, Mayor, just a little finer point. So my office represents the city, and so we're the prosecutor. So I mean, it would be,
Okay.
you know, we can't advise. We're restricted even in our discussions with the judges when it comes to specific cases. So we're an advocate before them, and so that obviously creates some potential conflicts. And so there's that segregation.
Other questions?
So,
Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
so if highway patrol or the sheriff's office within the confines of the city limits pulls somebody over for an offense that might fall into this, do they automatically go to the municipal court, or is that handled differently?
I'll leave either one of you guys.
Mayor, council. So typically they're going to cite under the state statute. So those are going to go through circuit court. I mean, I'm struggling. I don't think we've ever had anybody but a Casper police officer, and I'm not sure that they could even have jurisdiction to do that. But yeah, it's solely the police department in our experience.
Other questions? Yeah, Michael.
This is just my own lack of experience, but if it may be a longer answer than we have time for, but can you explain very kind of in a nutshell? I've never understood what, I mean, the kind of the advantages and, well, the advantages to the city and or the person that's been accused of a bond. What I'm not sure, I've never understood how those, why they're in place, what's the purpose, you know, and then how are they handled?
Yeah, good question. So a bond is essentially part of a pretrial release order. So it's designed to do a couple things. Number one, it's designed to make sure that the defendant shows up for their trial. If they plead not guilty, sometimes we'll make them post a bond so that they show up. If they don't show up, as long as it's a forfeitable offense, we just take their bond and we're done with it. The other thing that we'll typically do,
If they don't show up,
they
just lose their bond.
They lose their bond. As long as it's a forfeitable offense.
And oh, I see. It's kind of like forfeiting a fine.
Exactly.
I see.
Yeah, if they don't show up and it's a must appear, we still issue a warrant for them because they need to appear.
Okay.
But the other thing that we will do in bonds is we attach conditions, and the conditions under the Wyoming rules, the conditions are related generally to public safety. So, for example, if you've got neighbors that are at odds with each other and they're fighting, we can put a condition on their bond that they have no direct or indirect contact with their neighbors. The other thing we'll do typically on DUIs is if they're waiting for trial on a DUI, they're not to be drinking, they're not to be in any bars, gambling establishments, and we typically even have them do random drug and alcohol testing while they're on bond. But it's basically, again, to ensure they appear in court and to promote the public safety until the case can be resolved.
So if they have violated any of those, they would potentially lose their bond as well?
Yep. Yeah, they're subject to a bond revocation, and if they revoke their bond, they can have to wait for their trial sitting in jail. Now that's very rare, but potentially that could happen.
It does happen on occasion, not frequently, but it does happen. And there's a difference between a cash bond and a cash or surety bond or an OR bond. So owner cognizance is when we just say, you know what, this is the first time we've ever seen you. We have no reason to believe that you're not going to show up for your trial. You have a clean record. We're going to release you on your owner cognizance. Where we see that, or at least where I see that the most is when I get an officer calling me at 2 o'clock in the morning and saying, you know, we just picked this person up. They need to go to the hospital, because technically they are in custody. And so technically they should be guarded by a police officer. But I'm not going to take a police officer off the streets when we're already shorthanded to have them sit at the hospital with somebody who's there because they're, you know, disoriented and drunk, and it's a misdemeanor. That just doesn't make sense to me. So we see those OR bonds, and then there's cash or surety. So you can either post a cash bond in the amount, or you can get a bail bondsman, which is the surety. Now, if they do the surety bond and they get a bail bondsman and they don't show up, then typically the city attorney's office will notify the bail bondsman, say, hey, your person didn't show up. You've got 48 hours to bring him in, or else, you know, we're going to issue a warrant for him. And then, like Judge Hand said, if it's a cash bond and they paid that cash bond and they don't show up and it's a forfeitable offense, then we just take the bond and we're done. But there is a little difference between those bonds. And that's the benefit to the city too, is because, you know, we don't want somebody sitting in jail on the city's dime on a misdemeanor for 6 days or 30 days until we get them into trial.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anything else before we move on? So thank you guys so much for your update, coming in, and
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, TAP grant application. Carter, do you want to tee us off with that?
Absolutely. We have the opportunity to make another application to the Transportation Alternatives Program offered through the state of Wyoming for some pathway improvements and network connections, if you will. Council should be aware that with regard to this application, however, despite design taking place and those kinds of things, if we're successful, we will still have some easement work to do and landowner relationships to firm up and those kinds of things as a part of this. However, if I could defer to Mr. Brower and his team to walk us through some of the details of this. We brought this forward as a stop to hopefully making a successful application and answering any questions, of course, that you all might have. So with that, Mr. Mayor, if I could defer to Tom, that'd be great.
Sounds good. Hey, Tom.
Mayor, councilors, so the city's done an excellent job of, got to give a shout out to Terry Cottonauer in the engineering department because he's really our TAP grant expert and has become very good at applying for these and has a great success rate. And so we've seen this as another option for a possible TAP grants. And TAP grants are administered through the Wyoming Department of Transportation. They're available for up to projects costing $1 million, and the match is only 10%. So it's a very favorable grant for these transportations. They're heavily weighted on kind of safe routes to school and safe pedestrian routes. If it's just a recreational pathway, the TAP ranking system isn't as favorable. But this project is kind of in a corridor where there's quite a bit of focus, as you can see up here. Got the red highlight around that section there with the bridge. That's a project that we already got the grant funding for. That's a project that Zalima and Jolene worked to get that grant, around a $4 million grant for the bridge project and that pathway. Again, that's a supplement or a replacement of the pedestrian access on Poplar Street. And it's a benefit because it's a safer route for the public than walking next to traffic. And it also provides some aesthetic value and some, actually even some destination value of being a bridge over the river right there when you think about events that are held in that area. So the pathway that we're talking about as part of this grant would be the pathway that would be on the, sorry, I hate to call it the south side of the river, but it's on the south, the south side of the river from that bridge down to First Street. Because this pathway with that horseshoe or the on-ramp, so to speak, is already in place. So it's that section of pathway, and then also with the ADA accessible overlook along the river. So again, it's an attractive piece of pathway on kind of an undeveloped portion of the river where we've done the river restoration. And so the total cost for the project is roughly $550,000. And so a requirement of the TAP grant is that we have the project designed before the grant applications are due, and that's towards the end of June. July 1, I think, is the actual deadline. June 27th is when we'll submit it. And so again, the plan is to engage the same consultant that's doing the design here to work on the design of this, and then go to YDOT and try and get the roughly $500,000 of money for this pathway, and then the city's match would be about $57,000 as my memory serves. So what we'd like to do is just get your permission to complete the application for this grant. It does involve a public engagement process where we'll utilize the services of the public engagement team to get members of the public that are interested to come. And it also requires, as I mentioned, that the project be designed before we can apply for the grant. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions or address any concerns you may have about the project.
Any questions about the grant for Tom or anything? Yeah, Pat. Amber, did you have your hand up too? Yeah, go ahead, Pat, and then I'll get Amber.
So thank you, Mayor. Unlike Robertson Road, they're not going to add a pedestrian pathway onto the bridge itself. So this would take the place of crossing the main bridge.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilor, YDOT had designed the replacement for that bridge, and they did it twice, I believe. And both times it came in way over their budget. And so at this point, YDOT, and it's interesting because when they designed that bridge, it was before West Belt Loop was in place. Now that West Belt Loop is in place, the number of semis that are traveling on that bridge is dramatically reduced. And so YDOT anticipates that them rehabilitating that bridge could be 10, 15, 20 years off before they rehabilitate that. We recognize the importance of pedestrian access for people across the river in that location. And so we identified this bridge as being a much safer way to get pedestrians across there. The added benefit is we have water and sewer lines that are attached to that whiteout bridge right now. We could imagine if we had problems with those water and sewer lines that are attached underneath there, very challenging to repair them and work on them. Our plan is to attach those water and sewer lines to this pedestrian bridge. So again, it makes it much easier, and it's a much shorter span bridge for us to work on. And if we have to work on those, it's pretty easy to shut a pedestrian bridge. It's a significant task to shut down Poplar Street in both directions. And so again, there's multiple benefits to the bridge project, and this pathway just is kind of the next step in the process to kind of complete some of these critical pathways in the downtown area.
Tom, am I understanding correctly that the $40,000 in design work would roll into part of our 10% match, or is it an additional 10% on top of that?
I believe that will roll into our match.
Other questions? Any concerns? Questions? Yeah, Kyle.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Tom. Did I hear you correctly that there's no intention of YDOT to replace the Poplar Street Bridge for any time in the near future?
That's correct. That's, we have quarterly meetings with YDOT, and as an aside, those are going very well. We're working very well as a team together. We recently had one on mowing along, YDOT corridors, and so they've been really cooperative. But again, they do not have that in their 3-year stip, and the last time frame I heard was like 10 to 14 years. And I think depending on traffic, I think that could even be longer, because that bridge was so doggone expensive. And I think they really have to look at, at 5 o'clock, I think we all know that bridge is a bit of a mess, but most of the time that intersection is not that horrendous except at those key times. And again, a lot of the vehicle problems or semi problems have been attenuated by the westbound loop, where everybody circles around instead of coming right through town with truckloads.
Thank you.
Others? How does everybody feel about having them move forward with this grant application? All right. You have direction?
Thank you so much.
All right, Carter.
Thank
Yes,
you.
for recreation projects.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, I think it was last week or maybe even the week prior, we had a couple questions about the work that'll take place over at Marian Crryer. And council is aware that staff would like to close down the pool at Marian Crryer in order to accommodate the significant construction that is taking place in the park there throughout the summer. And certainly some of those improvements will include the pool itself, but as you know, the splash pad will remain open throughout the construction period while these improvements and replacements and so forth take place. We got the sense that there may be some additional questions as it relates to that strategy. So we thought we would prepare a little bit of a primer as it relates to the Marian Crryer project, as well as the North Casper ball field project too, so that indeed you could get a feel for the work taking place in the athletic side of the North Casper neighborhood over there, and entertain any broader questions that you might have with respect to that bevy of work that is real exciting to be taking place here over the next summer or so. And so with that, I asked Zulema to come forward and with some prepared information so that you can get caught up, as well as give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have pursuant to this this great work.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. Thank you for having me tonight. I do have Nick Wibbs, our rec manager, and Edwin Lures, our aquatic supervisor here, in case there's some detailed questions that I might need their help with. But as Tom was talking about the project with the pedestrian bridge across the North Platte River, that was the same funding source as the two projects that we're going to be discussing in North Casper. So really exciting opportunity to get a significant amount of funding through the Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Grant Program. And we appreciate our partnership with state parks in that regard. So the two big projects that we have, of course, going on in North Casper are the Marian Crryer pool, and as the city manager alluded, we did award a contract for construction of a portion of that project last week, which spawned some of the questions, I think. And so that project is actually progressing a little more rapidly than the North Casper Athletic Complex project. In that we already have several contracts awarded for the work there. American Ramp Company is already under contract to construct, the skate park and the pump track just north of the pool area, between the pool and Tanny Field. And then we have done a lot of the in-kind work that was committed as match by City Parks. They have removed just a few trees that were in the project area. We'll come back and landscape after the concrete and other improvements are in. They also removed an old dilapidated playground that was there that was actually duplicative because at Tanny Field Park, there are 3 playground structures that are quite nice, catering to all age groups. And so we didn't need that playground anymore. We felt like the pump track and the skate park were a better addition to just spawn multiple types of recreation in the same area and bring people together in the neighborhood. So so those are the primary, and of course the contract that was awarded last week was for the concrete work for the skate park, and then American Ramp Company can come in and install those components for us after that concrete cures. So that is the progress on that project. As the city manager indicated, another portion of that project are major pool renovations. And so that building was constructed in the 1960s and has not been renovated since. And so it really needs a lot of TLC in order to be a place where people really want to go and spend time. And so we are going to invest in a renovation to the building. But aside from that, we are also needing to replace the filtration system, the boiler, a lot of the mechanical components for the pool itself. The pool structure is actually in pretty good shape. It was actually just lined last decade, 4 years ago. So the pool itself is in pretty good shape. It's the support amenities for the body of water that needs some support or some upgrading. And so because we're going to be looking at those mechanical components, it's much better to have the pool down and closed for the season so that we can get in there, get those repairs done, and then start the renovation on the actual building itself as well. So it's really a benefit to make sure that all of the work can be completed before the season starts next year. To close the pool this season, the splash pad will remain open as long as construction allows. There will be a lot of adjacent construction activity going on, and so as long as it's safe to have the splash pad open, we absolutely will. If there's anything that might interfere in the safety of the people at the splash pad, we may close for a short time. But the plan right now is to have the splash pad open through the entirety of the season, and the hours are quite generous, 10 to 7, every day of the week. So that's Marian Crryer. Do you guys have any questions?
Questions about Marian Crryer?
So how do we get the information out to the North Casper residents that might be more inclined to use that swimming?
We can certainly put out, Mayor, Councilor, we can certainly utilize some assistance from our public engagement team to put out notices. We also have record of our, through our point of sale of our past patrons there that we can utilize to get people informed. And then certainly our customers who buy pool passes are generally able to be utilized at any pool. And so we can redirect that way as well.
I'll get you, Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. So is it possible, just as an idea of identifying water users in general and putting perhaps a flyer in their water bill just as a precaution? And I don't know if that's possible with our current vendor to do something like that.
Mayor, Councilor, so the water billing is under somebody else's jurisdiction. That falls under Jill's department. My understanding, though, is it quite expensive to add inserts into our water billing flyers. So I'm not sure that that's the most cost-effective way for us to get the communication out that's needed. But we can certainly explore several other avenues that I think will be effective.
I do think utilizing social media and being able to get that out is going to be a real critical component. And being able to do it, we've seen that happen before whatever. So it's cost effective. And I think they do a really good job of getting that out too. So.
Mayor, Counselor, I might add that probably more so than any other pool in our system, Marian Crryer is more of a neighborhood, locally used pool. And so we could really target some engagement to the North Casper neighborhood to make sure that those folks are aware. I do think it's a nice added benefit though that the splash pad will be there. So if they happen to miss all the public information and go to the site, they will at least still have an aquatic opportunity to cool down and enjoy while they're there.
Michael.
Yes, kind of along the same lines as Councilor Sweeney's first question. Along with that awareness, I'm happy that the pool, it sounds like will just be closed. You anticipate this summer of 25 and reopen hopefully by, okay. Well, I'm just wondering if a part of that awareness campaign could include perhaps, I'm just thinking of like some reminders or precautions to especially to parents and just think about the proximity to the river, and I just don't want us to have a repeat of, and knock on wood, and thank God we haven't had any, I don't think any major, issues with kids in the river recently, but I just worry about that always. Just reminding parents and kids, not with the pool being closed, the temptation to go swim at the river, that just is always something kind of in my mind. So, and again, kind of just, especially given their proximity to the river, so if that's possible.
Mayor, Counselor, that's a great suggestion, and we will definitely use that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks, Sulima. Sorry if this has already been discussed. I'm a little distracted, but my understanding is the splash pad will still be open. Isn't that correct? Okay. Thank you. So still an option for folks in the area, just not full immersion. Thank you.
So I couldn't quite understand and track with the contract letting the exact layout for the pump track and all of that. So is that right next to the existing splash pad and then across the street? There's quite a bit of wood chip and area over there. Will part of it spill in over on that side?
Mayor, Counselor, so I'm happy to provide council with the kind of concept design for the project. We can get it in the info packet, but the entirety of the project will remain on the Marian Crryer Park site. Immediately north of the pool and splash pad is where the skate park will be, a concrete pad with a metal skate park installed on top of it. And then directly north of that, there will be a small pump track. All of those will be south of the road and Camp Field. We will not be getting into Camp Field Park at all, other than to do some spruce up landscaping.
Thank you, Mayor. Sulima, that'd be great if we could get the concept. That's something that I've wanted to share and reference on multiple occasions. So it'd be great if we could get that. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, and I think just to build excitement down there, if, the whole project can be discussed, hey, coming soon, this is the direction. So please bear with us along the way. I live a half a block, so I don't really want.
We can put a sign in your yard, Pat, saying, please ask me questions about the pool.
Stop here.
Yeah, please stop here. and
5
stop here.
5 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Please don't.
So then just one last, so typically on the 4th of July, and I know we had an incident last year in particular. I can't remember if it was a gunshot or stabbing, but typically it's, you've got a lot of folks and families down there that enjoy the fireworks down there. Unfortunately, it went awry last year, but and I've never seen, you know, the police department come down there. They're shooting fireworks off and all of that. And but I don't know if we've got a different idea this year, being the construction and trying to. I would hope we wouldn't shut that down. It was unfortunate last year. We had an idiot. So.
You know, in a perfect world, the skate park and Pup Track would be done by the 4th of July. I just can't promise that. So there may be some construction activity in the area, but again, Matt Campfield won't be impacted at all. So all of those gazebos, play structures, basketball courts will be open and available for people to utilize for the holiday.
Good questions?
Okay, so the other project, may I?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry.
So the other project is the North Casper Athletic Complex improvements. And again, this one hasn't progressed quite as rapidly because a little bit more concept and design work needed to happen. And so we did contract with CEPI, and they are utilizing RDG Planning and Design as a sub-consultant with them to help us master plan the entire complex. And then what we will do from there is prioritize and ensure that the funding that we have from the grant can be applied where we will see the biggest impact immediately. So we recognize that while it was a very generous award of $2.8 million, unfortunately that will not be enough to improve all of the complex and get it up to where it needs to be. And so we really want to focus on prioritizing those dollars where they'll have the most impact. But we need some help to do that, and we need to understand what the bigger vision is for the entirety of the complex into the future. So that effort is well underway. In fact, we have another meeting with the consultants on Friday morning. And so as soon as we get that plan, we're happy to share it out, and then we'll start prioritizing the funding and getting bids out.
Questions about the North Casper Athletic?
Mr. Mayor, do you mind going into a little more details of what we're going to repair or replace and those kinds of things?
So the mayor, city manager, thank you. So again, North Casper needs a significant amount of improvements, but some of the things that are slated, at least to evaluate whether we can fund them this go around, is lighting at Tanny Field, improvements or renovations or just complete replacements of the bathroom and concessions that are in the area of Tanny Field. There's fencing around all of the fields that need to be addressed. The dugouts are all masonry, which create nice little hidey holes for bad activity to happen. And so we're looking to take out those masonry dugouts and install chain link, nice, clean, open chain link dugouts for all the fields. In Field of Dreams, there's a significant safety netting enhancements, backstop repair and replacement. So we're excited that we feel like with fairly minimal investment, we could really elevate the Field of Dreams complex again to be one of the premier destinations in the region for youth baseball. And so we are excited about those enhancements as well. And then at Wells Park, which is our ability playground, the softball surface material needs to be replaced. It's a poured in place material that's starting to peel and come away. And so we need to look at enhancing that as well. So that's kind of a summary of all the needs. Again, we don't believe the funding will do it all. And so we need to prioritize those. But.
Thank you. Questions, Pat?
So you lost me a little bit. I Field of Dreams. Does any of this have to do with Crossroads?
Mayor, Councilor, no, sir. This is all just North Casper. So it would be the Field of Dreams complex as well as this softball and soccer facility. That's considered all of the North Casper Athletic Complex. Crossroads is a completely different complex, and it was not in the area that qualified for this grant funding, so we had to keep it confined to the North Casper area.
So are we doing any improvements to what I'll call the stadium? I can't remember, is it Tanny Field?
Mayor, Councilor, that is being determined by this master planning process and when we prioritize the funding that we have available to us. You know, if you recall, the Parks and Rec master plan actually recommended that we decommission Tanny as a field. Of course, we don't want to do that until we have an alternative field for high school baseball to take place. But it might mean that we make less of an investment in that property right away and reinvest those funds where they're going to have a bigger impact and in facilities that will remain for the long term.
The questions about this project. Okay. So we appreciate it. So it's just information only. If you have questions, reach out to Carter on this. All right, community engagement priority based budgeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilors, this is the opportunity to hear the plan as it relates to our efforts to engage the public as an important piece of the priority-based budgeting process, and give you the opportunity to ask any other questions as it relates to what we're doing moving forward to engage the public. You know, be aware that indeed, with respect to the budget that we are bringing forward to you in just a couple weeks, we don't anticipate that aspect of the process to be done before you look at a budget and hopefully adopt and everything else. But rather, if you view this as a dynamic process, it takes place over a period of time. And an effort that we pick up every so often, then I think you'll have the right perspective as it relates to how we believe public input can be incorporated into the budgeting process in a more formal way than we've done in the past. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, if I could bring Tom up again to walk us through community engagements plans as it relates to this. That would be
Welcome back, Tom.
It's good to be back. Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Yeah, I've got Corey Cronin with me today. I don't know if all of you have met Corey or not, but he's a great addition to as a marketing and graphic designer, part of our public engagement team. And so he's done a great job of putting this stuff together. And we've spent a lot of time trying to figure out, how we solicit the public input. And so Corey did a great job of looking at some things they're doing in Laramie and other locations. And we went through a lot of different iterations. And so the plan at this point is to put out a questionnaire to the public, and we will promote that questionnaire by a press release, by Facebook, every means possible to let people and try and entice people to respond to the questionnaire. It's important that we call it a questionnaire because it's not a survey. It's not a scientifically valid survey. It's not like we're getting the exact pools of people that we need to question. But in a minute, I'll have Corey step you through just kind of the basis of the questionnaire. But our approach is, with all the hard work that council's put in to look at all the priorities and establish all these priorities under these main kind of pillars, if you will, is to reach out to the public and present those in very simple words. Under this pillar, these are the 5 or 7 priorities that were identified, and see if they agree with those strong, agree, mediocre, or strongly agree, and try and flesh that out. And again, the thought from there is that gives council some input, what the public believes, and then possibly some time for council to reflect upon your categorization of high, medium, and low for those priorities in regards to how the public in general feels about this. So again, Corey's done a great job of putting this questionnaire together. It's a lot of pages, but when I look at it and having filled out a lot of questionnaires, you can roll through it pretty quickly. Also, if you want to spend a couple hours, you can sit there and type some comments in, and we can greatly appreciate that. So plan is to push this out there for about 3 or 4 weeks. If council wants us to, we can go live tomorrow morning. and get this out there and start the public engagement campaign to get people to come to our website and take the questionnaire. And then we will come back to council with the results of this survey and give you some quantification of how people responded to the different questions on the questionnaire. So with that, I'll maybe turn it over to Corey and let him kind of step you through the process. So this is what you'll see on your computer screen if you choose. Oh, one thing I mentioned, the other thing that Jolene has done a great job of is working with our GIS department to geofence the area. So people that live in the county, or people like me that live in Evansville or the Mills or Barnum or wherever, they can't take the questionnaire. Or if they can't fill it out, we know that they're not within the city, because we really wanted to limit it to what the people, the residents of the city, what their input was. So again, with that, I'll step through Corey and have him step through a couple pages. And again, we can go through the whole thing, whatever serves the council. We'd be glad to address.
Hi, Corey, come on up.
Ooh, Mayor, councilors, thanks so much. Yeah, so as was stated, what we're trying to accomplish here is take the priorities that you all have set out in your matrix. We worded it in a way to make it a little bit more digestible to the broader public. For example, I don't think most people would know what a third space is. So we simplified that language to make it more digestible to the general public. And with that, go through a perfect, what you all put out in your matrix, a comparison to what we'll have the general public go through. So with that, we're going to go through demographics, get a sense as to who the folks are, how long they've been in Casper, the age range of folks that are filling this out. Do those, I think we've identified 7 various overarching categories that we've identified for priorities. Do that comparison, and then hopefully in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we'll take what you all have identified as high, medium, or low priorities, show what the public has said about that, and be able to report back to you. This is where there's perfect alignment. These are areas where there's a little bit of disagreement. These are the areas where the public and the council have some wide disparity. With that, Mayor, Council, do you have any questions for Tom and myself?
Yeah, any questions for Corey or Amber? I see your hands linking up.
Thank you. I have a few questions and a few bits of feedback on the questionnaire. The first one, it seemed to me, I didn't go through line by line, but is this mapped directly to each of our priorities, just reworded in a more simple language? Are these a 1-for-1 match across our priorities?
I'm going to have him click like 3 through so we can get, if you just hit next, it'll let you into the next one. And even hit next, scroll to the bottom. There's a demographics section.
Mayor, councilors, the short answer is yes. It's a direct one-to-one.
It's challenging for us, councilor, to show when we printed it out on paper. It wasn't as appealing as it is when you see it in this format there.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's helpful, and I thought that in most cases the simplified language worked well, and I felt like still captured the goal well. Couple just general pieces of feedback. There were just a couple of them that were structured differently in terms of how we, well, many of them at the beginning said, make it this, do this, and then one just said winter road services, so it wasn't like worded quite in the same way. So it just, as I was going through it, it like kind of made me lose my momentum because I was getting used to a pattern, and then there's just a couple of those. So just maybe took a look at that, and then I was wondering if there's a way. I like the 2 questions that have been posed at the end of each section. I was wondering if there's a way at the end of everything, if there's any way for folks to be able to provide feedback about the goals themselves, whether low priority, medium priority, high priority, if there's things that are missing or tweaks that people think should be made. And if we did create that question, I think we would need to find some way to number the goals or something like that, so they could refer back to a specific goal number 8A or whatever you wanted to do with it. But otherwise, I think it'd be difficult to reference a particular goal in there. But I think that could provide helpful information. So I don't know, if we just left it open-ended, I'm not sure if we would get valuable information or not, but I was left wondering that as I went through the questionnaire. And I think that was it. So just like a few structure phrasing things. And then, yeah, if there's some sort of general, like, what do you think of the goals we've selected? And are there any, specifics that you would call out, like, ditch this one entirely, or we need, more emphasis on we're missing a goal around X, Y, or Z, and then making it possible for people to reference back up through the questionnaire of any specific feedback they had about those. But otherwise, I agree, it's quite a few things to click through, but they're really quite simple, I think, to be able to make a quick determination, low, medium, high. I don't think it would take people more than 5 or 6 minutes to make their way through the survey if they wanted to go quickly through it. So.
Mayor, Councilor, I think, we could even do, like, I'm thinking back to my old debate days, Roman numeral 1, for the pillars, and then we have 1A,
Yeah.
1B, 1C.
Yeah.
And I think we could do that numbering fairly easily. This is the guy that didn't prepare the survey also. I'm hoping he says we can do that fairly easily.
Yeah.
And then and then at the end, we could even just list all those out.
Yeah.
So it'd be a long grocery list, and then we could put a more generic and bigger box at the bottom where, these are the pillars and the goals, 1A, 1 through Roman numeral 7, A, B, C, D, E, and they were all there together, and then we could say, is there anything that you think we've missed or anything you'd like to add or supplement it? That would be fairly easy. Okay, I'm getting the nod. That would be fairly easy for us to add to the end of that, to take that kind of general input and to give them one page to kind of reflect on all those pillars and the priorities of those pillars.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what we got, at least. I mean, recognize that we don't want a ton of qualitative data that we have to pour through necessarily, but being as this is the first round through it and everything, it might be nice to have that information.
Or Counselor, we could treat that as an extra credit question or something.
Yeah, sure.
Really engaged in the survey and
right.
want some bonus points.
Yeah, sounds good.
Others.
So, thank you, Mayor. I'm on the opposite side, worried it's too long and too detailed. I probably would not fill it out. But I'm not a really good survey taker. So, but so I worry adding more to this is and I'm glad to see the numbers aren't there like on the draft. That to me is a little gentler approach than the draft. So, but even so, I think I saw 11 pages going through. So, is there any way to shorten it?
Mayor, Councilor, one of my reflections, because I can suffer with impatience, is I thought, well, if I really had to take this, I probably wouldn't, because I'm not that good of a typist. If I wanted to provide my input, it would be pretty easy to select 1, 2, or 3 for all those and then just leave the boxes at the bottom blank. And that's okay, and at least we get some input. And so I think that's the way, because my initial reaction was very much, holy cow, 11 pages. And on paper, it doesn't look at all like it does on the screen. So when I looked at it this morning on the screen, I was like, I think if I go to the doctor's office and they give me an iPad and I've got to, my prescriptions are the worst. But I thought this is easier than that, as far as just picking 1, 2, or 3 for the 45 priorities or whatever that we have.
Mr. Mayor, I think the only other point that I would add would be that once we have this battery of citizen input and so forth, my recommendation would be that we reconvene the task force to take up the granular work of seeing what it is that the citizens have provided and finding ways in which we can reconcile what the citizens have provided with regard to the ways in which council has answered these very same questions, and bring back the adjustments, as it were, pertaining to what we think the public is telling us after we go through this effort. And so if it pleases the council, maybe we could kind of put the members of the committee on notice that we might have to bring them back to the table to help work through that and see if we can't bring a more finished product back to the council as a whole.
You guys okay with that? Council's okay, task force is not? Amber shook her head no vehemently.
One-time offer.
Randy?
In that case, I'd like to shush Pat over here and agree with Amber that I think if, especially if the task force is meeting, stop me if I'm wrong. I do think we should have that opportunity. Hey, did we miss something? Everybody wants to tell us what we missed. So maybe we did miss something that we agree with and we'll bring it back to you. And everything else Amber said, I fully agree with. Please fix the winter one. It bugged me too.
Mayor, Councilor, I did see that. We switched it over from the draft version to the more polished version in our survey 123. Did catch that, so that has been corrected.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Pat. Amber, you were next.
Mm.
No?
I don't think so.
Oh, I thought, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So what should we consider a success rate? 20 responses or 200 responses, or, I can't imagine you'll get more than 500. 500 would be huge, I would think.
Mayor, councilors, it's not like I have a real breadth of experience on this, but I know I've held a lot of public meetings over the last 30 years and had anywhere from 1 to 20 participants. More often 1 than 20. But if we had 500, I would say it's exceptional. I'd say it was absolutely exceptional. We're going to do everything we can to try and stir up some interest in it, social media and the press releases. And again, I think for most people, it's one of those even on your phone. Again, I challenge with that because of my eyes, but even on your phone, you could go through and take this thing pretty simple if you're waiting between games for your kids or whatever. And so I'm thinking if we can get some public interest involved, that we'll get more responses. I would not venture a guess at how many people. It's real challenging to try and guess how many people, but I think the other thing we can always do, I remember doing it before on another questionnaire, we can extend the time. Say, hey, it's extended for another week. And again, all kinds of silly things have been tried in the past. Where, hey, if you apply for this, you can get a $20 gift card to Walmart. I think those are the best ways to approach these. I hope that people are interested and care about providing input. Another thought that's been going through my head this afternoon is making sure employees that live in Casper, respond to this, because I think it's important. And I think in the demographics, hopefully we can segregate those as well. So we know, when we have employees of the city versus just members of the general public.
Mayor, councilors, if I can follow up on that, I would also say when you see the email come across your desk, the press release, if you all would be willing to share that on your social media pages, that can just help us beyond the expansion of our 12,000 or so followers on Facebook, as well as the folks that may or may not respond on Oil City or the Trip or whatever. So if you all would be willing to share that, that would be a huge help in boosting the number of folks that participate in this questionnaire.
How did you have a follow-up?
Well, I was just, Mayor, going to ask Corey, that obviously has got some experience in this, not disrespectful to Tom whatsoever, but, do you have a feel what you think would be a success?
Yeah, mayor, councilors, I think, I would expect based off of what my understanding is with participation around spec tax and that outreach, it's my understanding we had a couple hundred folks engage publicly with that. That will be my goal. I will set for myself to have minimum 100 responses and do whatever I can from the public engagement side to get a minimum of 100 responses. Because I think if we have less than that, I don't think we're getting a broad enough spectrum of the community. So your help with social media pushing, what we're doing on our page. I'll be making personal phone calls to the various media outlets to say, hey, did you get this news release? Can you please make sure that this gets published? I want to make sure that we get as broad a section of our community as possible. And I really appreciate your help in doing that.
Mayor, councilors, just so you know too, with Corey's got a background working on political campaigns and doing some of that. And so it's been a fruitful conversation when we've talked about these things. Somebody coming from a little different perspective, not purely from the municipal perspective to from the campaign perspective, where you really are trying to reach to those people and how you get voters. And so he's been a really great voice and a great addition to public engagement. And I feel highly confident in our ability to reach as many people as possible with him helping out on that.
Michael. In the memo, you mentioned that we want to try to have the data to look at during our budget work sessions on the 27th and 28th. So I'm wondering if, and again, not being an expert in questionnaires, but would it be helpful to in that publication for asking folks to participate in the questionnaire to maybe give a deadline, kind of, so that people get a sense of urgency to kind of fit. I think, if I remember correctly, that having a deadline is kind of maybe kind of an incentive for folks to, don't put it off. If you're going to do it now, that kind of thing. And then the other thing I was wondering about was, and I think Tom's right. I think if we don't get participation, we need to extend it. I just don't know after the work, the deadline's creeping up on us for June for passing the budget. So extending that too much might be to make the data useful to us. And then the other thing was that, on the kind of on the demographics and on participation, I imagine you'll be able to kind of monitor as the questionnaire is open, how many people are participating. If we notice perhaps that there's a low, because I think there are people kind of more in that maybe 40 plus age range that are more likely maybe to participate in the question. I don't know. I'm just wondering about the participation by demographic age group, and so we get a cross section of ages and that kind of thing. So whatever I think we could do to kind of make sure we encourage, and I know we can do a lot of things and it still doesn't work, but if there's things we could do to kind of encourage that broad range of a participation, that'd be great.
Or did you want to say something really quick?
Yeah, if I could, Counselor, I think it would be very much a long shot to have usable data to bring to the budget workshop on the 27th.
Oh.
So yeah, I wouldn't count on that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on that. I think we need to take the time to get a good battery of responses and assemble the data in a way that the committee can use it effectively in order to polish it up and present it to council. I think if council can, sort of view this as a routine that we're going to take on, from time to time throughout the period of a year and those kinds of things, that's probably the more realistic approach and maybe the most value-added step to take as it relates to incorporating the public data. But to have it ready for the work session, I just don't think is at all realistic.
Okay, I wondered about that. That was kind of mentioned as a target date, but I think I agree with what you said, Carter. I think it could kind of inform us as we go along. Are we on the right track? And kind of reinforcing our priorities we set close to the mark or not, and if we need to readjust, that's good to know as well. So that's okay. Yeah, thank you.
Want to answer anything from the counselor? Yeah, Councilor Brown, I think you're absolutely right. Having done this type of work for a number of years, adding a sense of urgency is really important. And I think to your question about ensuring that we have a broader spectrum of folks, again, I think encouraging your personal networks, not only posting on social media, but asking your peers and your family members to fill out the survey. I know I will be doing that, to try to get those people in their 20s to the 30s, 40s. My mom's in her 70s, and really try to expand that cross section to make sure that that's why we're not calling it a survey. It's a questionnaire. It's certainly not going to be scientific, but to ensure that we are trying our best to get a broad spectrum of the community across demographics, across council districts, across jobs, and to let you know as well, we are working with HR to ensure that that is put in the weekly newsletter to encourage employees to fill it out as well that live here in Casper.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, everyone.
Thank you so much.
All right, moving right along, we're right on time. Budget amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilors, this is the point in the budget year where we need to tie out some final expenses and final directives of the council for the current budget year. And again, put together the appropriate spending authority for the things that we've tried to anticipate throughout the budget planning process and of course the execution of the budget up until now. This is very consistent with what we generally will do at this point in the budget year, to have a third amendment that ties things out on a final basis, if you will. Typically ends up being the smaller of the amendments in that, we've already rolled projects forward. We've already sort of brought in the revenue that we did not anticipate originally, and that kind of thing. So I've asked Jill and Nicholas to kind of walk us through the elements of this final budget amendment. But if you have any questions in preparation for its formal adoption, as it were, that's exactly why we're here tonight. So feel free to ask those questions in preparation for that formal consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, thank you for that introduction. I think that was really great. So Budget Amendment 3, like has already been discussed, is something that is normal. We do this every year about this time. We kind of finish everything up and get things ready for the end of the year. So Mr. Gassman is the accounting supervisor for the city, and he has put together this amendment. If I could have him walk you through that, that would be great.
Mayor, councilors. So there are, I'll start at the beginning. The expenses for this budget amendment is increasing it by about 5.2 million. With that, there is about 3.2 million in offsetting revenue, or 2.2 million in offsetting revenue that will help fund those increased expenses. So a total increase with revenues and expenses to the budget is about $2 million. So there are a couple of big items on there that I thought I would go over with you. The first, Tom kind of brought up in his presentation earlier, and that is the First and Poplar pedestrian bridge. So that project is already budgeted, but this is to hang the utilities onto that bridge and get them off of the Wyandotte Bridge, as he mentioned earlier. So that is what that portion of the amendment is for. That is by far the largest part of this, with $2 million of expenses, which will just come out of the water or the utility fund balances, which currently have enough to absorb that. After that, one of the other large ones is the risk management fund. So just through some items throughout the year, there had been increases in expenses that were above what we would normally expect. So just higher premium cost. Another example of that would be like the Sage Playground with the liability that came from the insurance claim on that. So that's a big chunk of it. So with that, there's about $880,000 in increased expenses, and we're expecting to collect about $480,000 of that back through either grants or insurance reimbursements. The next biggest part of this amendment is the wildland fires. So we have been deploying some of our firefighters to help throughout the state and the country to manage wildfires that have occurred. With that, there is offsetting revenue where the agencies that we're helping fight the fire will reimburse us for those costs. So that actually generates a little bit of money for the city. So even though it's increasing the expenses, there's a full offsetting revenue that will occur to help absorb that. The next item for discussion on this would be the salary changes that went into effect in January. So there was a meeting in December that we brought the Graves consultant in who discussed some possibilities of salary changes. So this is adding the budget related to that into the respective funds. Right. Some other items that are worth considering as well is the grant awards. So in total, there are 5 new grants that the city received since the last budget amendment. Most of those are related to like public safety, so police and fire, either equipment or training, that kind of stuff. There is also one grant that we are removing from the budget, and that is the Arbor Day grant. That is specific to the branch across America that has come before because the federal government pulled that grant from us. And then the last item that's worth talking about in here is the subsidized funds. So that would mostly be the recreational funds. So just depending on how they're doing revenue and expense wise, that will increase the amount of subsidy that we need to budget for them. And then there is a table in the memo that kind of goes over each of the funds that are having a change and what related to those changes. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that any of you might have.
Thank you, Mayor. So on the wildland fire, are those, any of those monies expected through FEMA, or how does that exactly work?
So I don't believe it's directly related to FEMA. FEMA might pay a portion of it, but it's not really a grant that we receive. So when we send a firefighter out, we get a contract that for the time they're committing and the equipment they're taking with them, we will get a reimbursement for it. So I believe for the most part, any of like the county fires that we go to, the state pays us. And then I'm guessing that the other states we go to as well, the funding comes from there.
So,
Go ahead, sorry.
So a follow-up to that, I guess the one I'm concerned about was I know we sent a group to California someplace, and I think it was in response to the fires in and around LA. And with the response that I've heard, that the current administration on the federal level wasn't really excited about reimbursing some of those funds. So I just wondered if we had any sense if we would get stuck on that particular one.
Mayor, Councilor. So for the wildland fires that we have gone to in like the fall timeframe, we have already received reimbursement for all of those. I think we have recently sent a couple people, but I would not expect, I would expect that we will collect them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I apologize, Mr.
Nicholas.
Nicholas, thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate it. My question is probably actually better suited for Tom. And getting more steps in. I know we've made you run some paces, but my question's in regards to the utility reconfiguration at Poplar Street. I was curious, Tom, you spoke earlier about the difficulties closing Poplar Street, which I totally agree with. I use Poplar Street all the time, every day. And you find out a lot about someone's character when you close one lane of Poplar Street. I will say that. But I was curious if you could ballpark at all the costs of, shutting down one lane, dragging out the construction equipment. Like, do you have any idea what the costs are with closing Poplar Street compared to, like, say, a pedestrian bridge?
The challenging part with Mayor, councilors, I apologize. The challenging part with traffic control is the duration. Because it's not just, it's this much per day. Because if you have to initiate it, there's a lot of cost to initiate it. And because that is a state maintained roadway, then you have to meet all the state requirements. And so you end up with, potentially even flashing signs along with all the necessary tapers and barrels. It's not uncommon on something like, I remember when we were shutting down Center Street underpass, it was like $15,000 to shut that down. So if I had to ballpark, if we had to shut it down for a period of time, it could easily be $15,000 or $20,000 to shut down the lane. And so again, relocating these off of a YDOT structure onto a structure that we own and maintain is to me an absolute win. And I've dealt with structural folks with YDOT in Cheyenne, and they're good structural people, but they're focused on cars and their structural bridge. And when you start hanging things on the side of their bridge, they're not very happy. It doesn't matter if it's a sign or a water line or a sewer line. And so, and overall, again, because that YDOT project strung out for so many years, we spent a lot of money on engineering, designing, and then redesigning those water and sewer lines and all the pedestrian pathways and the lift station and all these other things. And then to find out, oh, we're not going to do it. And then all of a sudden we have to, gin up some more money to pay for those utilities. So it was a little frustrating. I'm tickled with this solution because I see it as that really long-term solution. We're not going to have to deal with this again. When YDOT goes to replace that bridge, we'll have the challenge of testing people's character when we shut down YDOT to rebuild that bridge. But at least we won't have to worry about city utilities hanging off the side.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Tom, and I totally agree. It makes way more sense to have them attached to a city-owned, less, a city-owned asset that does not have the kind of vehicle traffic that Poplar Street does. So I totally agree with it. I guess the crux of my question is if YDOT is not expected to be replacing that bridge for the next 7 to 10 years, is there a reason to be? It makes a lot of sense to get it done before they do that. But considering the timeline we have on that, it being quite a few years out, is there a reason we would do it this fiscal year compared to, say, one of the next several fiscal years? The reason I ask is because I have been trying to look for opportunities. We've adjusted kind of park rental rates, and we have to do utilities every year. The 6 cent just went into effect this year, and so I'm just looking for opportunities to throw residents a bone in regards to trying to keep some costs down, and the $2 million that would come out of the water fund. My guess is if it's there, when we do our next rate adjustment, should it remain in that fund, the rate adjustment would have to be for, a lot less. And so I'm just curious if there's any context I might be missing in regards to the reason we would do it this year as opposed to maybe 2030 or, several years down the road.
The water fund right now, if you think about the performance and, the top line that shows where we're at now, we're well above our minimum reserves. We're well above that. So even by taking this $2 million out of there, I don't see that having a dramatic impact on the rates. Because really the rates, yeah, they're designed for capital improvements. We're going to be bringing you an update on water where we have old cast iron mains that we need to be addressing in town. And so we put together a long range budget for that. And so I don't see the rates as being that flexible based on the capital improvements. It's much more on our operational costs of that water. And so I don't know that there's that much of a bone to throw towards a potential lower rate increase on the water side. That's money that's in the bank right now. God bless Jill and her crew, because that's gaining us good investment income off of that money. But it's not money that's really is going to affect the day-to-day operations and really have that much of an impact on rates.
Or did you want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add, Mr. Mayor, Councilor, it's a perceptive question, is that we know we need to do it at this point. It's already on our list for repairs and so on and so forth. The second thing I would add, though, is that not only is this an opportune moment, because we're already going to be in the area, we're already going to be building the bridge with grant funding that has come forward with for that and so forth. We avoid increased costs that project will undoubtedly be borne by the ratepayers if we wait even a year after this opportunity presents itself. So in addition to what Tom just shared, I would have you remember that the opportunity is ripe right now. And it's ripe also because the cost impact will be much different than when we consider it at some point in the future, whether that's a year, 2 years, or 3 years down the road, knowing we got to do the project anyway.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Amber.
Thank you. I think my question will be for Zulima. And Nick. Can you talk a little bit more about the subsidized fund changes, particularly looking at the chart here? There's some context for where expenses went up, where revenues were decreased. But I'm wondering on specifically aquatics and rec center, are there any high level areas where revenues lagged compared to what we were expecting when we set this budget out?
Your counselor, Nick Whips, he's our great manager. So I'm gonna let him take the first stab at it and then I'll fill in.
Yeah, Mayor, counselors, just to give you a high level on aquatics and on the rec center, when we're talking about the daily admissions revenue shortfall that you're seeing, that's specific to our admissions and memberships for our indoor aquatics facility, and we can directly attribute that to construction. We opened mid-September, and it took a while for all of our regulars and users to realize that not only were we back open, but we were better than ever. So as we looked at this, based on what we're looking at right now, we're back to admission numbers we're used to, but it just took a couple months for us to get back to that point after we had been closed for so long. Talking about the aquatics fund there. When we're talking about the rec center and the revenue shortfall there, that's specific to classes and summer adventure camp. And with that, I guess it's two-part. Over the past 3 years, revenue projections for this line have been consistently overestimated, and including FY25. And I've been working with staff to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure what we're projecting is not only obtainable, but also reasonable. In the past 3 years, that fund, even though we've been projecting $300,000, I think our average was just over 2. So with that, you'll see the budget amendment as to why we brought that back down, because we won't reach that $300,000 measure. But we also are working on a lot of different measures to get us back to pre-COVID era revenue numbers when it comes to the classes we're offering. And it's summer adventure camp. You guys know that we're putting together some more purposeful stuff through that Building Resilient Futures project with the grant funding we got through the Collective Health Trust. So hopefully, as we're improving our training, the programming, and the support for the kiddos in that program, we're going to see more of the parents seeing that and kiddos coming through our doors. And then with classes, we're just working on diversification, reevaluating long-standing classes, new trends, survey instruments, and really just matching those up with community needs. And included with those efforts, we're excited. We were here about a month ago where we are rolling out that new membership structure and working with the Community Recreation Foundation, where now scholarships are available to all of our community members, not just seniors and kiddos. So we're hoping the revenue projection, along with all the efforts that we're putting together, will not only we're doing our due diligence, but we're trying to make sure that we're meeting that projection and not over projecting, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
One theme. So I would say in terms of the rec center, another kind of dynamic there is the marketing that is needed to really promote our programming. We made a pretty significant investment in our fitness space. We turned what used to be like a daycare sort of fun room for youth into a spin room, and we just haven't really yielded the use of that space as we had anticipated, and I think a lot of that ties back to the marketing. And so we are in the process of hiring a new rec center supervisor, and so one of their first tasks will be really creating an intentional marketing plan for the fitness offerings that have expanded at the rec center, and really kind of hammering that new programming as well as some of the other exciting things that we have going on. So I hope that that will help, but we thought out the gate we would have a little bit better response than we have had to that.
Any other questions for, yeah, please.
One of the other things, if I may, Mr. Mayor, is with respect to getting those numbers correct from a direct billing standpoint as it relates to maintenance of the buildings and custodial support and so on. Can you touch on that very briefly for us as well?
Mayor, city manager, council. So when I became Parks and Rec director, one of the first things that I did was centralize custodial and maintenance under buildings and structures. Before it was decentralized, and all of the rec enterprises were hiring their own custodial staff and managing that component, which, as you can imagine, hiring people to clean your buildings and then scheduling that and filling in when people call off sick and all of that is a significant time investment. And so I felt like the supervisors were spending much more time than was effective in that space and not in rec programming space. And so the result of that, however, was that now the rec center and other rec enterprises pay buildings and structures for that service. And we went to a bill for service model 2 years ago. And so we're still honing that in, figuring out kind of what that sweet spot is between services that buildings and structures is providing to all of the enterprises and the needs of the facility to make sure that they are clean and well maintained. And so, of course, as facilities get older, the maintenance costs of those facilities are increasing. And with that custodial component, we're still just trying to find that good balance. And so that absolutely has contributed in all the funds to expenses. Saving grace there that the money is in fact going back to the city, just in a different way.
Yeah, Kyle.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Zalima and Nick. I don't have any other questions for you all, so I guess if anyone else did.
Does anybody else have any questions for Zalima?
I apologize. I'm actually gonna pick on Tom again.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Come on back up, Tom.
Tom, sorry. I'd pick on Cindy if she was here, but we don't have her. My question is in regards to the bail fill fund. So looking at the fund impact summary, it looks like we have a revenue increase of $238,000 over projected or over what was budgeted for bail fill, but our expenses increased at a higher rate, 370. So we have a net budget increase of 132. Do you mind providing some context in regards to that line item?
Mayor, Councilor, I'm drawing a blank on one particular project that's jumping out there for me. And I apologize. Cindy texted me right before I came in and she had a migraine headache and couldn't make it to the meeting. So I could step out and give Cindy a call and see if I can come back and give you a little more context to where that's at. I know in general with the revenue at solid waste can be lumpy based on a couple of things. Construction is one of those items. The other one is depending on private carriers, what they're taking on and not taking on. And the other one that's can be a great one is there was contaminated soil from the Glenrock area that we took on that was like $1.2 million of additional revenue. So it's, again, there's, as I've noticed through my shorter tenure at the city, trying to really, water and sewer is pretty doggone easy. And water is more challenging because you don't know what Mother Nature is going to provide, but sewer is really easy. Solid waste, again, can be just kind of lumpy and cumbersome depending on some odd projects. And even the city of Casper, the CBC demo, you know, there was more tipping fees paid there to get rid of that material. From the expense side, again, I can step out and find that. I apologize for not knowing. My other option would be to provide you, you know, a detailed memo that could be in the packet that could give you a breakdown of exactly those items that make up the changes in additional expenses. But I apologize for being caught off guard.
I'd make the recommendation that we can do that memo, so you're not going to bother Cindy or anything. If council's okay with that.
I'm okay with that. On the condition that the budget amendment, is that usually on consent? Will that be on consent at our next meeting? And if so, I would just ask for it to be pulled off for any potential discussion.
Consider it done, yeah.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, Nicholas. Welcome back. Any questions for Nicholas or Jill in regards to this? Okay,
And I do have a little bit of knowledge on the
perfect.
the Baleful Fund. Mayor, council members, the main item in that is an LRP grant. So what it is we have a credit with the DEQ. I believe it was due to some overpayments in years before, and then we utilized that for some of our capital related expenses. So this budget amendment is increasing the revenue to record that credit we're getting, and then the expenses is kind of the match to that as well.
Yeah, Nicholas, thank you so much. Mayor, councilors, I know with the LRP grant, the old landfill remediation, again, originally, the original plan there was much simpler. And then they identified a storm sewer that we needed to be replaced. And at first DEQ said, we're not paying for the storm sewer. Cindy wisely went and negotiated with them and said, hey, this is part of surface drainage for the old landfill. And they agreed to pay for a portion of that. And again, she sat down with them and negotiated the substantial increase in the grant. Along with that, there's the gas collection ditches that go around there, and then the replacement of the storm sewer. And I know that project, we had an amendment that came through not that long ago on that project. That was a sizable amendment to get the old landfill sewed up. I shouldn't say sewed up, because the only piece that's left is the potential of the leachate that's leaking down below and remediation of that, which will be another extension of that LRP grant.
Thank you. That was kind of my assumption, is it give us the opportunity to do a match for a grant. I assume that was probably it, but yeah.
So Carter, do you think we need a memo now, or is that, do you think that was enough explanation?
I think that's the answer. So if
That's suffice for you.
I mean, if it's easy to pull together, I always like more information rather than less. But
If you guys, if that's all right, I guess.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Nicholas, for the perspective. All right, you just need us to move forward.
I believe so.
Okay,
Yeah.
everybody's okay with us moving forward and getting it on the agenda? Okay, thank you. Carter, agenda review. We're good. Open up a political can of worms.
Yeah. Council, you can see where we're going as it relates to our next regular meeting. And of course, the big item for us is with respect to our final work session of the month, and that is the budget meeting of the 27th, where we deliver the budget to you and essentially initiate your deliberative process. We typically reserve 2 days on the calendar for budget discussions, but we don't always use 2 days. And so that really is just a placeholder in the event that we do need to come back with some homework or incomplete discussion material and that kind of thing. But by all means, don't think that we will need 2 days to go through the budget with you in 2 weeks. Beyond that, we have some items we're following through the early part of June. And then, of course, as I typically do, I like to direct your attention to the back page to make sure that we are following an appropriate course with respect to items that you have in mind or that we need follow up on and so on. We need to flesh that out more at items. That's exactly what the kind of input we would need from you as it relates to this page of the grid document. So that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Part of the only clarification is budget session, we usually go late. Will we provide dinner or food for the council that night?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure everybody knows.
Yes. Yes.
Why we're burning the midnight oil on that.
It's the 27th.
Yes, and possibly the 28th.
The 28th is
Wednesday.
But that's some graduation parties for high school are taking place.
Okay, on the 28th if we have to. Yeah, no worries. Any questions? Anybody have anything for agenda?
Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Do we have on there sometime to discuss the gun stuff? So,
So Mayor, Council, yes, certainly that is something we're working on. I think, yeah. I'll have to get with the city manager. We may want to break that up. I think a portion of that could be legal advice as part of an exec session. Discussion as part of a work session would be my thought. So, yeah.
So we'll start there first. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anything else with the agenda? All right, let's do council around the table. Brandon, do you want to start?
Sure.
I'm gonna go get this.
So long as I get to go first, that's all that matters, right? So only meeting I had was drug court meeting, which I'm not gonna ask for the agenda yet because she's gonna reach out to us when she's got her little presentation plan, but she is gonna ask to come to a work session and give us a little how-to so we all know what drug court is about, what they're doing. And then when we have subsequent meetings, I'll give you guys some follow-up once we all know what the heck I'm listening to. That's all I have.
Thanks. Michael.
We had a.
I'm here.
Jenna's here.
Oh, Jenna's here.
Sorry, Jenna, I didn't even, it was completely.
I sit next to Brandy.
Sorry, go ahead. And then you can go before Michael.
All right, ready? Can you hear me all right, though?
Yes.
Okay, so in case you guys didn't know, CNFR is June 15th through the 21st. So they're full speed ahead on the marketing. Ticket sales are up. Let's see, he said up 100 tickets on the season tickets, so that's good. So they're going to have some discounts that are going to be coming up too, like for Memorial Day. I think she mentioned Father's Day. So keep a lookout for those. The other thing is on the last Saturday, the Cinch Style Show is going to be happening at the Ramkota. Individual tickets are $40, table of 8 is $300, and that'll be from 11:30 to 1:30. But there's more information. I brought flyers for everyone if they want those to hang up at your respective businesses or places. Let's see. Oh, Sports Ranch, they have a whole slew of things that are going to be happening in tandem with the rodeo over there. They have some a party zone that they're going to be setting up. Of course, they'll have their vendors, and then outside they're having an acoustic band. They're not going to have like a big rock and roll band per se, but it's all acoustic. Booze garden, cornhole tournament. There's some business mechanical bull riding. So a whole bunch of things are going to be coming up. So just so you know, keep your eyes and ears open for discounts and tickets for all the other events. That's about it.
Thanks, Jenna. Michael.
Thanks, Mayor. So we've had to reschedule our public art response team meeting. Councilor Jensen and I are on that team. We pushed it out to later in the month for some things staff needed to take care of. So we'll reschedule that. I think we have rescheduled that for maybe the 22nd, I believe. But I'm attending the Salvation Army lunch meeting tomorrow, and I think they still have tickets left if anyone's available and interested. It starts at 11:30. It's at the barn out on Zero Road, I believe. And also attending the Police Week block parties tomorrow. I'd encourage everyone to go. It's at Davis Street Station tomorrow afternoon, beginning at 5 p.m., I believe, kind of help celebrate our police officers. Police Week. Let's see, next week. Well, first of all, Funky Junk is this weekend. It's a big event at Davis Street as well. And then, let's see. Next Monday, I have the Central Wyoming Senior Services Board meeting, so I'll be here for that. So that's all I have.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Matt.
I don't think I have anything.
Great. Thank you.
We had the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting last week. We heard this time from Mountain Hogadon folks. I had Adam Studer from Casper Mountain Racers give us an update on their program. So they are running a youth skiing program. They have about 60 students. They see year-over-year growth, and they're to the point right now where they can't accommodate all the families who want to participate. So their interest is outpacing their capacity right now. They had great feedback about their opportunity to be renting time at Hogadon for the group and the impact that that's had on the ability of their participants to grow their skills and be more competitive at competitions, both high school level and some national competitions as well. They mentioned, in terms of things that would help their program, being able to get on snow earlier and improving our snowmaking capacity would improve that program. The lift, of course, is a big topic of conversation with their group as well. And Randy gave us some highlights of the season up there. They believe that they're on track to meet and exceed the cost recovery goal this year, which is great news. Night skiing has continued to do well there, had 16,000 skier visits on 97 days open. And let's see, we had some reports from Hogadon Basin Snow Sports School and Ski Patrol as well, but I didn't get a verbal report from them, so those will be in your packet, I'm sure. Let's see. Then we mostly spent the rest of the time updating that group about the cost containment strategies that we have all talked about here and giving them, those are the folks who were at our meeting when we were talking about that, so gave them some updates about what council talked about there. Then, gosh, I took extensive notes. You'll be pleased to see it. So your packet will have additional items, but that was kind of the main user group information that I wanted to pass on to you. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Amber.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any updates? Yeah, well, I kind of went off here a little bit. I went to Brandy, and then I skipped Jenna, then I went to Mike, went back to Jenna.
Just real.
He's just all over the
I'm
table.
just all over the place.
See that?
Just know, Pat, you're next.
It's your turn.
It's the mayor. He makes the rules.
So,
As opposed to round robin.
So tomorrow night, I've got Amico reuse. Had a meeting earlier, came from there, on some preliminary talks on sustainability and stuff. But tomorrow night's the Joint Powers Board meeting. I appreciate at our last work session, having, or I guess it was a pre-meeting last week, Blue Peak come in. I'd also request that we talk to Spectrum. I found it interesting that Blue Peak hit an unmarked line of Spectrums, and the questions that I still have is redundancy in Spectrum's ability. If something like that happens, why did it affect Verizon and some other things around town? So if that's possible, if not, no biggie. Then I was also going to mention the Casper Police Department's block party tomorrow night. I think if you can, if the weather holds out, hopefully we don't have snow like the bighorns are supposed to get. Would encourage folks to come. I had heard some rumblings that Hogadon has potentially tried to raise individual funds, was on trying to get a new ski lift.
Not Hogadon, but citizens.
Citizens.
Yeah, I think there's a group of people, I know there's a group of people that are still working on finding a different pathway to funding that project, yes.
And so I don't know how this would,
And Zulima, the grants and, looking for all of
Yeah.
those different alternative funding mechanisms, yes.
plus wealthy donors.
Sure,
might-
yeah.
Okay, so I would just suggest is down the line, obviously, as more of that comes together, I'm certainly not opposed that the city try to do some sort of similar to the second sheet of ice. Is there a process possibly that the city, I don't know where the money would come from. Carter's looking at me like, okay. So, I just, that suggestion, if it comes to pass, I'm certainly amenable to that. I think we'll see benefits, hopefully, from the second sheet of ice folks, so on their efforts. And then lastly, I didn't know necessarily if we have heard anything from the county on where they're at on the land issues. If they would maybe that's something for executive session. So, yeah.
Sorry, if that's not done, I didn't.
I think that was his last, yep.
Okay, I was just tipping off. I found more notes. So if you can come back to me at your
Absolutely.
leisure.
How about I go to
have a couple
Kyle?
more. Great, yeah.
And then we'll come back to you and then we'll go to, see, Pat, we're just going everywhere.
One last thing, if I could.
Of course.
So I thought you guys did a great job last Friday in Lander in front of corporations. I had to go to another meeting. I had my hand up and had to testify, but I ran out of time, and I'm sure Senator Case really didn't want to hear from me at that point, but I thought he was very gracious on keeping that on track, and was a little dismayed with the one representative not on the committee, a new member that got up and just lambasted our county commissioners and our elected officials and wham on misallocating and funding those organizations. I thought, Carter, your explanation of the money we spend for wham at 55,000, and could we hire here at the city of Casper that kind of person at 55,000? And I thought you lined that out well. So I thought the commissioners thought it was a great thought not to have our executive directors, either Jeremiah or Ashley, speak, but let Mayor Pacheco, I know the vice mayor was there too, but I think most of them got the point, but I don't think it's going away. So, and after going to the school board last night, not some of the same folks, but some of our local representatives were there to keep them on point with some of the new laws that they had passed this session. So, but very interesting times.
Amber, more notes.
Kyle.
Oh, Kyle, sorry. I'm a little lost now. My own little theory of how I was doing this is completely thrown away. Kyle.
Thanks, Mayor. We got a report from Jody, manager at Metro Shelter. We typically get one weekly for the Metro Shelter Task Force, so just passing along some observations from that report. They're seeing a lot of cats at the shelter. I want to thank NoCo Kitties. They met our staff in Chugwater to receive 11 cats last week. And Metro's worked with other shelters and rescues to offload even more cats, which is good because they were reaching capacity. They also had a Petco Love Adoption event over the weekend where they manned a booth with some of their dogs, cats, and a guinea pig, sounds like. So always glad to see those guys out. The last report I gave, they had manned a booth at the Spring into Safety event at the Boys and Girls Club. So just glad to have those guys out and showing kind of the animals that we have up at the shelter and good outreach to get those animals adopted out as quickly as possible. That's really all. My colleagues have mentioned the police block party tomorrow. It's from 5 to 7. It's not just Casper Police, it's also Mills Police, Evansville Police, Wyoming Highway Patrol, and Natrona County Sheriff's Office. So I'm glad that it's kind of a joint effort between all those agencies. A great opportunity to connect and meet or introduce yourself to anyone from any of those organizations. There's going to be a barbecue, games, giveaways, DJ, face painting, police vehicles. Metro is going to be there as well. And then, just a great opportunity to interact with our law enforcement. That is all and I was bummed I missed my Economic Development Joint Powers Board meeting today. Mike, did you make it? Sounds like you might have a report, so thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. Amber, now you're up.
All right, apologies for missing this. I'm still getting accustomed to the meeting format. So we give project updates at the end of the meeting. And so hear from user groups at the beginning, which I already updated you on, but project updates, Pat's question reminded me of that. So on the second sheet of ice, looks like we're going to have an update from the construction manager at risk soon about, I think Selima referenced that earlier, about where that project is at in terms of design and a true cost estimate. We've got some funding from the Community Rec Foundation to offer one additional free event at each of our rec facilities. So there's already some free events that traditionally happen, but we're going to be able to expand on that this year thanks to the Community Rec Foundation. Pools are going to open on June 2nd. That's soon, aside from Marian, Crryer, which we talked about at length today. Outdoor sports are in full swing, so the soccer fields have been full. I actually just drove past them. I really never go over there, but I had a meeting over there, and they were indeed very active over there. I did get an email, maybe some of the rest of you did as well, about the Plaza project at Ford Wyoming Center and some concerns about what the kind of construction and the state of things up there, but that project is underway. It's targeted to be done by CNFR, and it includes some landscaping and some pathways and some things that'll really make it look very nice up there, I think, and it will be a really nice enhancement. And we do hope that will be done before CNFR, and we welcome all those folks up there. The Sage Playground goes in June, the one that burned down. We've got the new one coming in. And then the bathrooms at Washington Park, did they open this week? Okay, so they're coming soon, finishing and coming soon, the new bathrooms that are part of that larger Washington Park project that we've received some variety of grant funding for. And then tennis courts, same story, construction will be starting for those here pretty soon. And then 19th hole is open up at the municipal golf course, and they are already off to a very busy season at the golf course. So that's the complete update there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great updates. Your Vice Mayor.
Alrighty. Yeah, we had Economic Development Joint Power Board this morning. There was only 3 or 4 of us there, so we got some exciting things coming up. Also, Radiant Energy will be doing more town halls over the next coming months to make sure everybody is educated on what's going on. So if you all have an opportunity to go to any of those, I would encourage you to go and learn more and help other people learn more about it as well. And then Pat was saying, we had the Joint Corporations Committee meeting in Lander. It was very interesting to participate in that and see what all that entails. And this Thursday, we'll have the breakfast with the governments, with the other government entities in the county. So looking forward to that. I think that's it.
Yep, exactly what the vice mayor said on Thursday. And the only other thing is Carter and I and the vice mayor and several other mayors went down to the Joint Corporations Committee, not to belabor some of the stuff that's already been said. The testimonies I thought were compelling. I thought that they made, I'll put it in perspective, the majority of people, of mayors and associations testified. And then there were two that came up against it, that expressed being against these associations, paying for them through taxpayer dollars. And so by and large, the majority of individuals and organizations and communities showed out in force, say this is overreach. And so my statement was very straightforward, is that this is a local control issue. Everybody wants local control. The state pounds the drum about local control. They don't want federal government interfering with the state. And it's the same thing if you read the Wyoming Constitution. It talks very, very blatantly about our opportunity to set our own course. And that's what I said in my statement. I was very strong and forceful within that. I was very disappointed that it got voted to move forward with the conversation. And so I don't know if Carter, if you want to say anything as to where you were coming from. So, but Carter did a great job, the same way that you had just said that as well. So stay tuned. That's all I've got.
More to come.
You remember what the vote was? Was it like 8 to 5 or?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep.
Which is, I agree, disappointing.
Yep. All righty, thank you, everyone. Right, basically on time, 10 minutes early based upon this.
Yeah.